my name is Vanessa, as you already know, and I am back again with a video for you guys this week. I'm going to be talking to you guys about the processes of bone remodeling and bone repair, as well as give you some tricks on how to better understand each step and the different cells that are involved in this process. So without further ado, let's start with the process of bone remodeling. Before I get into the processes of bone remodeling, I want you to better understand the different cells that are involved and give you a little trick and things to be able to distinguish between those types of cells. The first cell that I want to talk to you guys about are your osteoblasts. The key thing that you need to remember regarding your osteoblasts is that they build up the bone. These are the cells that are involved in your bone depositing portion of bone remodeling. So the next cell that I want you guys to be able to understand a little bit better are your osteoclasts. So your osteoclasts are inside of your bone so that you can be able to break down the bony fragments for the process of resorption. One trick I use to be able to understand to remember your osteoclasts is clasts crush. So your osteoclasts are there to crush or break down the bone. So the last cell that I want you to be able to understand are your osteocytes before I get into the process of bone remodeling. Your osteocytes are essentially your grown-up adult osteoblasts that are there to help regulate the activity of your osteoclasts and osteoblasts. Now that we have our three main cells that are involved in the process of bone remodeling, I want to take you through the steps. So first, our osteoclasts need to remove our old bony fragment bone tissue by secreting acidic enzymes into the matrix. So why do they do this? The acidic enzymes are there so that we can convert the calcium that's already in our bone into a more soluble form. That soluble form can then be released so that we can continue with our process of bone remodeling. This part of the process is essentially regulated by our parathyroid hormone. Now, if you remember from our presentations during this week about calcium regulation, an increase in the amount of parathyroid hormone in our blood levels can increase our osteoclastic activity, thus causing for more breakdown or crushing of our bones. So after our osteoclasts get done breaking down the bone, our osteoblasts have to come in to help recreate that bony matrix. Remember, our osteoblasts build up our bone, and they do so by refilling those spots that were broken down by the osteoclasts with our ground substance and collagen fibers. This is essentially making up our osteoid. So essentially, our osteoid is filled with the calcium deposits that are secreted in the area that was broken down by our osteoclasts. So where are our osteocytes throughout this whole process? Essentially, they're like the boss. Our osteocytes are the cells, they are the mature osteoblast cells that regulate the activity of our osteoclasts and osteoblasts. And that is essentially the process of bone remodeling. Our osteoclasts crush or help break down our bone, and then our osteoblasts remake our bone or build it. Now that we understand the process of bone remodeling, I'm going to try to explain to you the process of bone repair. So unlike bone remodeling, the process of bone repair is essentially fixing our broken bone. So bone repair is occurring after there has been some form of damage, like dramatic damage that has occurred to your bone. First, after our bone is broken, we need a hematoma to form. The hematoma absolutely has to occur first. What is a hematoma? So whenever I hear heme, I immediately think of blood. So a hematoma is essentially the internal bleeding that occurs in between the bony fragments that have been broken. The purpose of this hematoma is so that we can form a blood clot so that it can fill in that gap in between the broken spaces. The next step in our process of bone repair is the formation of our fibrocartilage callus. So this callus is formed both in between our bone and a little bit on the outside of the bone, your internal and external calluses. So why do we need a callus on the outside of our bone? Essentially, this is there so that we can have a little bit of extra support after breaking the bone so that our bone is less likely to break as easily the next time. One trick that I use to help me remember the fibrocartilage callus is by saying fibrofills. So the fibrocartilage fills in for the hematoma. the blood clot. So our fibrocartilage comes in, it replaces the hematoma so that we can carry on with our process of bone repair. After the formation of our fibrocartilage callus, we need our bony callus to be formed. How do we do that? So if you remember from the process of bone remodeling, our osteoblasts are there to help build up the bone from our osteoclasts breaking it down. It's a similar concept in bone repair. We need our osteoblasts so that they can rebuild our bony callus. One trick that I used to help me better remember this is after fibro fills, blasts build bones. A little bit of a tongue twister, but it sticks. After all of this occurs, your entire process of bone remodeling can occur just so that we can continue to make sure our bones are able to serve their function. Okay everyone, that was the process of bone remodeling and bone repair. I hope this video has been very, very helpful for you guys, and I will hopefully see you next week.